Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Chris Wallace from Fox News, Mr. Buddy with Obama and the rest of these liberal elite, once stated that Press Secretary Jen Psaki is one of the best to ever do it. She's one of the greatest press secretaries of all time. You know, Chris Wallace is a real objective journalist, but of course there was nothing ever objective about any of it, except for one thing. I'll tell you what's objective. Jen Psaki is objectively the worst press secretary I have ever seen, and frankly, what I would say just a bad, dishonest person. We have a nearly 1 year history of covering every single lie, all the nonsense that has come out of Jen Psaki's mouth, and folks, this one might take the cake as one of the worst statements, one of the worst responses and political takes I have ever seen. I know I say that a lot, but I mean, hey, Democrats seem to always outdo themselves and get more and more unhinged the more that time goes by. Joe Biden is possibly about to get sued for defamation with actual malice by Kyle Rittenhouse for associating him with some sort of right-wing militia from Wisconsin and essentially lumping him up as a white supremacist during his campaign. And when Jen Psaki was questioned about whether Joe Biden plans to apologize or whether doing that was wrong considering he was just acquitted on all charges, well, Jen Psaki doubled down and responded in absolutely disgusting fashion, which is why I say Chris Wallace is not an objective journalist when he calls her the best press secretary of all time. The only thing objective is that Jen Psaki is a terrible person. Let me show you guys exactly what I'm talking about. But before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We are still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so you guys know the context. We've been covering this stuff for weeks, basically since the trial started. And after everything, after the acquittal, after the interview that we covered yesterday with what Kyle Rittenhouse said, here's Jen Psaki's response.
Would the president ever apologize to the acquitted Kenosha shooter Kyle Rittenhouse for suggesting online and on TV that he is a white supremacist?
Well, let's be clear what we're talking about here. This is about a campaign video released last year that used President Trump's own words during a debate as he refused to condemn white supremacists and militia groups. And President Trump, as we know from history, and as many of you covered, didn't just refuse to condemn militia groups on the debate stage, he actively encouraged them throughout his presidency. So, what we've seen are the tragic consequences of that. When people think it's okay to take the law into their own hands instead of allowing law enforcement to do its job. And the president believes in condemning hatred, division, and violence. That's exactly what was done in that video.
But if you're saying that it was just a campaign video, it wasn't. The president also gave an interview where he said this Rittenhouse was part of a militia coming out of Illinois. Have you ever heard this president referring to Trump say one negative thing about white supremacists? These are all things, none of this was proven in the trial. And Kyle Rittenhouse is saying that the president had actual malice in defaming his character. Is that what happened here?
The president spoke to the verdict last week. He has obviously condemned the hatred and division and violence we've seen around the country by groups like the Proud Boys and groups that that individual has posed in photos with. But beyond that, I'll leave it to his comments around the verdict.
Now, I don't know about you guys, but if I was legal counsel to the White House and, of course, Jen Psaki, I would probably say respond with no comment and try everything in my power to not make things worse. This is the exact opposite of what Jen Psaki did. She once again associated him with what is supposedly a white supremacist group, claiming he's connected to this phenomenon that Donald Trump started, up-and-coming white supremacist and hateful groups and militias, which is absolutely untrue. And even the group that she named, the Proud Boys, have a track record of defending themselves against counter-protest and maybe ripping up a sign or two or taking down a flag. But she doubles down and just made things worse. If you ask me, this is just another receipt. She essentially confirmed that Joe Biden meant what he said when he said it, and that their political messaging from their perspective was intentional. It was intentional to target Kyle Rittenhouse as a white supremacist vigilante that was part of a militia group, which of course Joe Biden said with Anderson Cooper.
Well, look, I don't know enough to know whether that 17-year-old kid exactly what he did, but allegedly he's part of a militia coming out of the state of Illinois. Have you ever heard this president say one negative thing about white supremacists? Have you ever heard it? That's the reason I got back in this race, because what happened in Charlottesville. people coming out of the woods carrying torches, their veins bulging.
Their condemnation of this individual without the facts, without any facts, with nothing but slander, was intentional. And apparently, at least from what I see from this response, they meant it. They meant every word, and the clear motive of what they were doing immediately is apparent. She's asked, will Joe Biden ever apologize to the child, the kid that they defamed? And her immediate response was, but Trumpism, Trump real bad, white supremacy this, Proud Boys that. And so now it all comes full circle. The entire point they used Kyle Rittenhouse, and that's exactly what they did. They used him as a political tool to attack Donald Trump. The facts of the case didn't matter. All that mattered was they got a snippet of a kid with an AR-15 that they could paint as some sort of white militia member, some sort of mass shooter domestic terrorist, and then go after Donald Trump, who defended him. The infamous clip from August 26, 2020 that we covered a couple days ago of Donald Trump essentially describing the facts as he saw them, that Kyle had been attacked, he had fell to the ground, and they continued to assault him. They wanted to paint Donald Trump as defending some sort of militia member, some despicable member of society who should absolutely be condemned, but they chose the wrong one. And it's the same thing that they did with Donald Trump from Charlottesville. It's twisting the facts. When Donald Trump was referring to very fine people on both sides, he wasn't referring to the white nationalists. I mean, he said it himself. There were fine people on both sides, and I'm not talking about the white nationalists, but of course they cut that part out. Well, that's sort of manipulation, taking those white nationalists that Donald Trump was not associated with whatsoever and making that leap, making that connection for political purposes. That was the intent. And they did the same thing with Kyle Rittenhouse. It happened at a Black Lives Matter protest, and regardless of the facts, I mean, we know that Kyle Rittenhouse was there to help people. He also said this in an interview.
This case has nothing to do with race. It never had anything to do with race. It had to do with the right to self-defense.
Right.
I'm not a racist person. I support the BLM movement. I support peacefully demonstrating. And I believe there needs to be change. I believe there's a lot of prosecutorial misconduct, not just in my case, but in other cases. And it's just amazing to see how much a prosecutor can take advantage of somebody.
Regardless of all of that, the context doesn't matter, the truth and the facts don't actually matter. The only thing that was important for the White House was messaging, to paint him as a boogeyman and then connect him to the ultimate boogeyman that is Donald Trump, and this perceived white nationalism threat that supposedly surrounds him. And so the question that Peter Doocy asked was, will he ever apologize? Well, the question I ask in response, have Democrats ever apologized? Has Joe Biden ever apologized for his horrendous track record? Has he apologized for being the father of mass incarceration? Has he apologized for what happened in Afghanistan and the 13 U.S. service members that were lost? Have the Democrats ever apologized after 4 years of screeching that Donald Trump was somehow a Russian puppet, a literal traitor to the nation? They accused the former president, they accused Donald Trump of treason with nothing but false accusations, and Adam Schiff continues to double down. Democrats don't apologize? Is Joe Biden and Merrick Garland, his corrupt DOJ, ever going to apologize for creating this campaign labeling parents, concerned parents, at school board meetings as domestic terrorists? In a case last week, raiding one of their homes with armed FBI agents. Are Joe Biden and his corrupt goons in Washington ever going to apologize? Absolutely not. Democrats don't apologize. They double down. They attack and attack and attack. Kyle Rittenhouse crossed state lines while Democrats constantly cross the line in terms of their political attacks and their straight up defamation. And they always refuse to apologize. They never take accountability for their actions. I mean, absolute hypocrites. The Proud Boys are an alt-right, Trump, MAGA, white supremacist militia. A bunch of guys who have never committed real violence. A couple of them are in jail right now on felony charges after getting in a brawl in New York. That is pretty much the worst thing that has ever happened. And of course, no one tells the story of the fact that they got attacked by a group of Antifa militants. But of course, once again, Democrats and their corrupt goons in Washington made sure that they pushed for their organization to be labeled as a white supremacist, domestic terrorist organization. Meanwhile, once again, not leftist goons in Washington, but leftist goons on the street, the Antifa and Black Lives Matter types who continue to rob stores, essentially burn and pillage. Groups that are responsible for actual homicides. Well, you will never hear the Democrats condemn them, now will you? They'll blanket condemn violence as a whole, but when it comes to targeted defamation information with malice, and of course with political motive, well, you know the Democrats are going to take a real strong stance when it comes to that, to create this false aura that they're somehow on the ethical side. But if you look at their track record, if you look at all the context, they are absolutely unethical, inconsistent, and best of all, they're about to be held accountable and sued to oblivion. That's what I got for you guys though. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share it as much as possible. I gotta get back to work though. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.